Let's get us underway then. Good morning, Mark Scheifmeyer, the city hearing examiner. I've been asked to convene a public hearing to receive testimony relative to a mixed-use application submitted, referred to as Tahoma Ranch. It bears the city's project number LD 2024-0033, seeking hearing examiner approval of a mixed-use and subdivision for property located at 15010 Berry Valley Road and adjoining properties, proposing for the development of roughly 14 acres into 192 apartment units, 36 townhome units, 6 commercial lots, and open space amenities, including a clubhouse. In advance of today's hearing, I received the staff report authored by Mr. Wiebe, who is present. Record should reflect that various other members of city staff are present as what I assume to be the applicant's team, and there may be members of the public present today as well. We are conducting this hearing in a hybrid fashion, with most parties being present physically, but the opportunity to appear remotely as well. So again, in advance of today's hearing, I've received the staff report, which I have reviewed in its entirety, including all attachments to that report. I've also undertaken my own independent site and examination, which I did this morning, and I'm also familiar from this property as a result of a host of projects nearby that have required review. So the purpose of today's hearing is to then determine whether the requested application should be approved. This hearing has 3 components. It's an opportunity first for city staff to further explain their review of this application and their recommendations, followed then by an opportunity for the applicant to respond to the city's position, add to or subtract from what the city is proposing, followed then by an opportunity for the public to be heard. All those who testify today will do so under oath. If we do have members of the public present, I may have a few last suggestions to make. We'll wait and see if there are those wishing to be heard. I may then provide a few instructions regarding that testimony, depending on the number and circumstances. So let's get us underway. We'll recognize the staff report and all of its attachments as exhibits to this hearing today. With that in mind, let's have you sworn. Mr. Wiebe, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
All right, so I'll begin by summarizing the city staff report for this project. It'll summarize our review of the proposal and everything we've looked at so far. So RJ Development proposes to develop 2 parcels into a mixed-use development, providing space for 6 new commercial lots along Tahoma Boulevard and constructing a mix of townhomes and apartment buildings. 228 total dwelling units are proposed on roughly 14 acres. The property is zoned commercial district C1, and it is surrounded by other commercially zoned parcels to the north and east and residential zones to the south and west. Currently, the applicant is seeking both preliminary short subdivision to create the 6 new commercial lots and a mixed-use development overlay approval. Public noticing for this application was completed in April of this year, with the notice sent out to nearby property owners, relevant state and local agencies and tribes, along with the notice published in the Nisqually Valley News. During this initial public comment period, the Nisqually Indian tribe asked that a cultural resources survey be completed prior to site development. And in response, the applicant prepared a cultural resources survey, and this survey recommended that the site development could continue without further archaeological oversight. And earlier this month, a notice of this public hearing before the Yelm hearing examiner was mailed out to nearby property owners and published in the Nisqually Valley News on October 10th. This notice was also displayed at the site of the proposal on October 9th. As of the start of this hearing, no further public comments have been received. The City of Yelm State Environmental Policy Act responsible official issued a mitigated determination of non-significance, or MDNS, for this proposal on September 30th. And this determination was made after reviewing the SEPA checklist, the site plan, traffic analysis, and a Mazama pocket gopher screening report. This MDNS identified 6 required mitigation measures, including a mandatory contamination and toxics cleanup plan, and an inadvertent discovery plan, the planting of 6 new Oregon white oaks to replace 2 Oregon white oak saplings that were found on site, the payment of additional traffic fees to mitigate the project's impact to the transportation network, and finally, the construction of a new pedestrian access from the northwest corner of the site out to the adjacent Yelm High School parking lot. The full text of the 6 mitigation measures are included in the city's written staff report, and they are also adopted by reference as recommended condition of approval. Now I'll expand a little bit on the traffic mitigation plan for this project. The applicant originally prepared a traffic impact analysis, which found that 4 nearby intersections would drop to a failing level of service in a year 2029 forecast. However, it should be noted that these intersections were found to be failing both with and without the project. And due to the size of this project and the total number of new vehicle trips added to Yelm streets, additional traffic mitigation was deemed necessary. And the city of Yelm and the applicant worked together to determine an acceptable traffic mitigation plan to mitigate the effects at the failing intersections. The city identified the SR 510 and Longmire intersection as the preferred intersection to be targeted with improvements. And after discussion with the city and the applicant together, we mutually agreed that the proposal would be subject to alternate traffic impact fees amounting to $895,000, and that these alternate traffic impact fees would be paid in lieu of the standard traffic impact fees that would have amounted to roughly $617,000. And these additional traffic impact fees will help the city fund improvements at the SR 510 and Longmire intersection. The exact improvements are not yet known, as the city will need to have an intersection control evaluation performed, and we will need to work with the Washington State Department of Transportation to identify the preferred intersection improvement. The city is currently in the early stages of arranging this intersection control evaluation. In addition to these traffic fees, each proposed building will be assessed fire impact fees, and each residential building will be assessed school impact fees. Payment of these fees will establish concurrency for this project as required by the state's Growth Management Act. Moving to frontage improvements and site access. While no frontage improvements are required at Tomo Boulevard, the site's proximity to Yelm High School did present an opportunity for a new direct pedestrian connection to the high school's parking lot. The city coordinated with the Yelm School District and the applicant to develop a preliminary plan for a new sidewalk that will provide a direct, safe walking access to the school for residents in the new apartments and townhomes. The applicant will be required to construct this new sidewalk on the adjacent school district-owned property as a condition of site development. This new pedestrian access will include a lockable gate at the property line so that the school can close it during school lockdowns, and it will also feature a new crosswalk across Tornado Alley to connect to an existing sidewalk in the high school parking lot. Now I will kind of summarize the zoning and design standards found in Chapter 18 of the Yelm Municipal Code and their application to this project. The Yelm Municipal Code establishes several criteria for the mixed-use development overlay, including a minimum of 20% of the site being dedicated to commercial use, and the allowable density for the residential component, and a mechanism for ensuring that the commercial component is not abandoned during site development. The applicant proposed roughly 3.1 acres of commercial use and 10.9 acres of residential, which equates to a 22% commercial, 78% residential split. And with roughly 16.2 proposed dwelling units per acre, the proposal meets the 16 to 32 dwelling units per acre requirement of the zoning overlay. And finally, to ensure the commercial component is not left unfinished, the city of Yelm will be withholding the final 2 certificates of occupancy for the townhome buildings and the final 2 certificates of occupancy for the apartment buildings until the certificates of occupancy for at least 2 of the 6 commercial buildings have been issued. This will ensure that 2 of the 6 commercial lots are built out and ready for tenants before the last 4 residential buildings may be occupied. The city and the applicant are currently finalizing a development agreement to formalize this arrangement. And to parking requirements, the Yelm Municipal Code establishes off-street parking requirements for apartments that are based on the type of proposed dwelling unit: 1 space per studio apartment, 1 1/2 space for 1 2-bedroom apartments, and 2 spaces per 3 or more bedroom apartment. There's also 1 guest space required for every 10 units. And the applicant has proposed 326 parking spaces, which meets the minimum of 314 parking spaces required based on the breakdown of apartment units proposed. The townhomes will meet off-street parking requirements on their own with a garage and driveway, providing 2 spaces per townhome. Each building will need to connect to the city water and sewer service, and the applicant must also connect to the reclaimed water utility available on Tahoma Boulevard and use that reclaimed water to irrigate all open space areas. The applicant submitted preliminary landscaping plans. These plans show a 6-foot landscaping buffer along the eastern and northern sides of the property, along with a perimeter fence. And the southern and western sides of the property are bounded by Tahoma Boulevard and a newly proposed access road. This new access road will feature streetscape landscaping. The preliminary landscaping plan also features parking lot landscaping, which conforms to the requirements of Yelm Municipal Code section 18.55.020D. And the city has found that the applicant has set aside adequate space for the required landscaping areas and an acceptable configuration of landscaping features. The final landscaping plans must be submitted during the forthcoming civil plan review for final review and approval. The Yelm Municipal Code also requires that multifamily developments set aside a minimum of 10% of the total land area for open space. And the applicant has met this requirement with 1.5 acres of open space. And this open space includes the following features: 2 playgrounds, a dog park, basketball and tennis courts, a walking path, and multiple grass play fields. The city finds that these proposed uses all meet the open space requirements defined in Chapter 18.56 of the Yelm Municipal Code. And in summary, and pursuant to the approval requirements found in Section 18.14.090 of the Yelm Municipal Code, the city finds that the proposed mixed-use development does create environmental amenities superior to those generally found in conventional development, creates usable open space for the enjoyment of the occupants, preserves to the greatest possible extent the natural characteristics of the land, encourages development of a variety of housing types, provides for maximum efficiency in the layout of streets, utility networks, and other public improvements. The development will be served by adequate facilities, including access, fire protection, water, stormwater control, and sewage disposal facilities. The pedestrian and vehicular traffic associated with the development will not be hazardous to existing and anticipated traffic in the neighborhood. And the proposal is consistent in design, character, and appearance with the goals and policies of the Yelm Comprehensive Plan. And finally, the Yelm Public Services Department does recommend that this proposal be approved subject to the 18 conditions identified in the written staff report. And that concludes the city's presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Weeby. A few questions in there. I apologize for the randomness. It's always hard not to be. I'm not sure which of the plans is the final plan. There are multiple versions in the materials. And in fact, I note that the applicant's narrative describes an altogether different plan than the one that's before us. It suggests a larger development with more townhomes than what's currently proposed. So which of the plan sets or plan design would you consider the one that we are focused on?
I do have it pulled up here on the screen. This one was submitted in August of this year. I do believe I included the landscape plans in the staff report. Those are the most current landscape plans. And I do believe the overall site plan that was included as an attachment, that should be the most recent one as well.
Okay.
But just to clarify, it is the 196, or I'm sorry, I think it was 192 apartment units and 36 townhome units. That is the final configuration.
Okay, and it's the 7 townhome unit development as opposed to a 9 building townhome.
I would have to double check. Let me see. Actually, it's
the applicant's narrative have had 9 buildings, but the landscaping designs have 7.
Yes, it is 7 townhome buildings. That was the final layout.
Anything noteworthy about the evolution of the project going from what was 15 acres down to, or 15 and a half down to about 14, and again, some adjustment in the buildings. Anything noteworthy about that evolution?
As far as the size of the development, I'm not sure where the discrepancy arises due to with the site acreage, because the proposal has always focused on these two parcels. Regarding the townhomes, there was an issue with the setbacks in the initial proposal, so they kind of reconfigured things to meet the minimum setback requirement for the townhome buildings.
Okay. You had answered a question I had in your presentation. It wasn't clear whether the pedestrian pathway to the school was in lieu of an impact fee or simply in addition to a school impact fee, but it's in addition to.
That's correct.
Okay. The relying on directions is problematic with this project since uh, its more northerly or easterly portions are zigzagging in their lines, and so I'll do my best to describe things from a direction. But in the northeast portion, where it adjoins Tahoma Boulevard, further, I'm sorry, southeast. There we go. The pathway runs along the easterly portion of the project between it and the apartment buildings, but doesn't seem to continue to Tahoma Way. Is there a reason there isn't any sort of pedestrian access to Tahoma Way?
I didn't look at that too closely when I was reviewing the plans. I would defer to the applicant if they had a specific constraint with that design.
I wondered if there was some reason pedestrian access was discouraged from reaching the Tahoma Way for any reason.
Yeah, we didn't discourage that. That was just how this the plans were submitted.
Okay. The landscape along the westerly boundary, there is the access road that runs along the west boundary, and then there's a thin strip of landscaping, but otherwise there isn't much along that side. How would you describe the landscaping along the west boundary?
There is a 2-foot landscaping barrier there, or a buffer. We didn't really require a perimeter landscape on that portion of the site because we treated that as a road, and the streetscape landscaping, just like if it were an official city road, kind of established that function.
Is it intended then as the easterly side of that street that's intended to be street landscaped, or is it both sides?
It is just the eastern side.
Okay. Any thoughts of enhanced landscaping along the west side of that access road?
I guess, you know, we didn't consider it. It was just kind of evaluated as if it were a street and what we would look for street landscaping.
Okay. What do you envision, if anything, of the school-owned property to the west? Is it anticipated to remain undeveloped?
Yes, there is no current plans for development on that property.
Somewhat related issue is connectivity. The design does not propose for bulb or cutouts or future access points to any of the adjoining properties. What are the city's thoughts about connectivity in this neighborhood?
So I mentioned this in my summary of the staff report. I probably should have included an exhibit, or maybe there was an exhibit proposed, but there is a connection at this northwestern point to the Yelm High School parking lot. Right. And that was really what we were looking for, was getting that connection to the school. Beyond that, there is the internal kind of pedestrian circulation that connects down to Tahoma Boulevard. I'd say that's what we were looking for there.
And no felt I guess because the school district hasn't spoken to their use, no thoughts of curb cuts on the westerly portion that would lead out to Tornado Alley in the future to provide additional access points out that way.
As far as a road,
yes.
No, we didn't look at that. We did share these plans with the school district. I guess I didn't propose anything about a future road connection. It was really just that pedestrian connection we wanted between the parcels.
Okay. Traffic is the elephant in the corner of the room here. We have 4 failed intersections nearby. This will not lead to any new failures, but it will exacerbate existing failures. You speak to that. You spoke to that in your testimony as well as in your staff report, but I guess I'm just curious. We're adding 230 residential units and a substantial amount of commercial activity to an area that currently finds itself gridlocked. Do any last comments about that situation?
I think if possible, I'd like to defer to Ryan Shea, the city's traffic engineer, kind of to talk about how the potential for improvements at the SR 510 Longmire intersection could improve adjacent areas.
Okay, I'll come back to that with Mr. Shea. Okay. This is a policy thing. Your city council has zoned this property commercial with a declaration that as commercial, it must have at least a 20% commercial component. And the project achieves that minimally. It doesn't achieve much more than 20%, but it meets the minimum required. However, it meets it in a way that doesn't actually assure that there will be 20% development. It does incentivize that development, but doesn't provide assurance for it. From a policy perspective, is there anything about that, as I think about that, and does the city planning staff have any additional thoughts about making sure that this is in fact consistent with its commercial zoning designation?
I don't have any additional input on that. Gary, do you want to share anything?
I'll come back to Mr.
Yeah, sure.
As well. Okay. Yelm does not have a significant tree ordinance, correct?
That's correct.
On the this is a phase project, and certain conditions have been imposed as part of that phasing. The latter portions of the both the apartment development as well as the townhome development must await a certain amount of commercial development. What about parking? Will we be assured that all of the required parking will be accomplished relative to the type of adjoining development? Poorly worded question, but I think you know where I'm going. In that phase 2 is an apartment development, which includes public parking in the southwest corner between it and the commercial area. Are we assured that that parking will be developed as part of phase 2?
Are you referring to the parking that's in kind of this area where the mouse is? Yes, yes, I do believe that that will all be done concurrently with the apartment buildings. I may defer to the applicant when they speak to kind of confirm that. But.
And we would know that or be certain of that. How?
We could add a condition of approval to this project to guarantee that.
Okay. Let me go. Thank you, Mr. Wiebe. That goes to my checklist of questions I had for you. But so let's go to Mr. Shea. Mr. Shea, let's have you sworn. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You've heard my general comments and concerns regarding traffic, ones that are obvious from the nature of the traffic in that neighborhood. So tell me the city's perspective on the traffic situation and how it might be improved.
Yeah, so we spent some time reviewing the technical analysis of the TIA and talking through the best way to address that proportionate to this project. The Longmire SR 510 intersection has been a priority for the city. And the feeling is that while there are 4 locations documented as problematic, 3 of those being Solberg, Longmire, and Cullen / Berry, they're all consecutive and they're within the same influence area. And realistically, the city's not going to go through and install control at all of those. So it's an intentional decision to have Longmire be that controlled access point for these neighborhoods. And so while we're only addressing that one location, the intention is that traffic at those adjacent intersections can now shift to Longmire as a signalized intersection or roundabout controlled to be determined. And then all 3 of those intersections will then kind of benefit mutually from the improvement at Longmire. This does not specifically include the 4th intersection, which is kind of north by the high school.
The Mountain View.
The Mountain View intersection. That is quite a low volume movement that is failing. It certainly doesn't meet the minimum standards for traffic signal control, and there's already turn lanes both on 510 and on Mountain View. And given that this project is only adding throughput to the road and isn't actually adding to the side street where the impact would be felt most significantly, there just didn't seem to be an appropriate level of independent improvement that could be asked of there. And then additionally, this is a bigger thing, but the expansion and completion of the Yelm Loop project is intended to shift some amount of traffic from the existing corridor to that loop road. It remains to be seen exactly what that sort of shift will do, but we would expect the actual delays in the TIA to be better than shown because it's not accounting for a shift related to that completion. And that is intended to be completed within the horizon of the project. So I think that kind of speaks to the conversations that we had and kind of why we were comfortable with where we landed.
Okay. A more of a traffic engineer question than a traffic management question. Tell me if it's outside your strike zone, but the project requires 2 access points to an arterial. It achieves that through 2 locations along Tahoma Boulevard within relatively close proximity to each other. Is there anything about the closeness of their proximity that is problematic to the design?
I can speak to that a bit. I would say that it's nice to have more spacing between access points based on the layout of their lot. They would have potentially had an opportunity to go farther, but having the second access across from Berry Valley Road was a positive in the view of the city because it allows for better connectivity to the surrounding street system. And just generally speaking, Tahoma Boulevard is a substantial road that is certainly well below capacity now. And so there really is no concern about congestion in the short or long term on this facility. So the spacing was less of a concern because of that.
Okay. And no issues of someone, for some reason, turning right out of the easterly one and not easily visible by someone at the next intersection?
No, I think the sight distance was something that was documented in the TIA, and we felt comfortable with the diagrams and the sight distance that's been documented.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shea. We'll go then to Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper, let's have you sworn. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So I've asked staff some policy aspects of this, and let me restate the question I posed to Mr. Wiebe, which is, again, your city council has deemed that this property should be developed commercially as a C1 zoning district, and with a minimum of 20% commercial development as part of any mixed use development, which the plan meets, but it meets it in a way which does not guarantee that there will be 20%. Is that good enough? Does the city regard that as fully complying with the letter and the spirit of the C1 zoning ordinance requirements?
Well, just for background first, You know, I think that the mixed use development concept, when it was established, was really geared toward vertical development. So that you obviously would have to develop all of the commercial spaces below and then go up. We have not had a vertical development proposal for mixed use, and so we have struggled with this issue to try to make sure that the commercial does in fact happen. We've had this occur with the Tahoma Terra development as well. It went for 15 years, I think, before we finally got a guarantee to get the commercial spaces built. With this one, you know, we are, as you said, kind of in a policy mode on this, trying to figure out the best way to ensure that it happens over time. So working with the applicant and through a development agreement, we're making sure that at least 2 of the buildings are fully constructed and that the others are build ready. So they will be supplying the infrastructure, getting the building pads ready to go. So they're not going to be developable for residential purposes down the road. And as to whether or not that is going to completely satisfy the intent, there's some measure of risk there that we're taking, but it's sort of the best we can do.
This is a subset of the question. With the apartment buildings, they are fungible. They are each 12 unit developments or 12 unit buildings, I believe. Maybe not. What's they're 8 of. They're 8 of. I think they're 24. Thank you. So each of the apartment buildings is of a like number of units, and so if we're withholding 2, it doesn't really matter which 2 we withhold because they're all of the same thing. That is not true of the townhomes. The townhomes are a mix of 4 unit buildings and 6 unit buildings, and so I'm curious if the city has any thoughts about which 2 townhome buildings might be the ones that are restricted from development until there have been 2 commercial buildings prepared. If I was to impose a requirement that they be 2 of the 6 unit buildings, would the city have objection to my thoughts about that?
Well, to be honest, we hadn't really considered that.
I doubt that it had been considered. It's not the sort of thing that was a hard focus. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I have a good answer to that question. All I know is we'll be really mad if they don't get it.
I get it. I get it. Understood. That's a given. Okay. I don't. Anything else, Mr. Cooper? So that concludes. Does that conclude the city's presentation?
Yes.
Okay. We'll then turn to the applicant, and there is a host of people present, most of whom I assume to be associated with it, who will be its spokesperson. And you are again?
Frank DeRocher, RJ Development.
Okay. You can come up to the podium.
I need to sign this.
No, well, it doesn't hurt, but so let's have you sworn, Mr. DeRocher. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yeah. You've heard Mr. Wiebe's testimony as well as the testimony of other staff. You've heard my questions. You're familiar with the staff report. Taking all of that in consideration, what would you like to tell me today?
First, sir, members of the community, thank you for being here and your time, and your opportunity to be involved is a big deal. I appreciate that. RJ Development, the company I work for, we're very people-focused and relational. We don't strive to build structures, but communities, and our portfolio demonstrates that through single-family homes, multifamily communities, and our history of senior housing. Knowing how close we are here to the high school has presented unique opportunities as well. And we've been very intentional about designing the Tahoma Ranch idea with that in mind. We've worked long and hard with the city on the details to get to this point and agreeing on all terms that you see in the staff report. So we try to be very collaborative with our approach here. When I first got my hands on this project, I called friends immediately that work at the high school. I talked to my own high school kids and their friends about what kind of cool places they would find appealing up there at the front in those commercial spaces. And the vision here, as you can see, demonstrated on the site plan, is to give the Yelm community some great, safe, and the high school kids especially, some great, safe, appealing opportunities to hang out and spend time up at the front, up at the street frontage, but also to draw people through that down a tree-lined street, welcoming you with a rec building that opens up to recreation areas and playgrounds and sports fields with living spaces around it to drive the community together in those spaces. The facts of the statement, I'll try to be brief. The facts of the statement have already been stated by the city. Clayton did a great job with that. 6 commercial lots up front, 192 apartment units and 8 buildings, 36 townhome units up on the north side in 7 different buildings, which he absolutely was correct. We had more buildings there, and I apologize for the discrepancy. Through the maturing of this project and setback things and stuff like that, they were all originally 4-unit buildings. That's why there were 9, and we had to lose a couple there to create opportunities there to meet the setback requirements and stuff as we went through design maturing. So we're excited to be here, and we're all happy actually to answer any questions that might arise from this. So
one that Mr. Weeby left for you was what's the connection between the pedestrian pathways and Homa Boulevard in the what would be the southeasterly portion. So there, along the easterly boundary, there is this pathway that runs along all the apartment buildings, but on the plans it seems to peter out and not extend past the commercial pad to Homa Boulevard. Is it just not showing? Is it not intended?
So you'll know from your recent site visit that you mentioned that
there's a significant grade.
There's a grade issue there also, and which presents some issues with not only feasibility but trying to coordinate the grading on stuff that already is existing and isn't going to move, and then trying to decide how best to provide adequate circulation. That's why we're not connecting to that road, because the grade differences that really would cascade into everything throughout the project. Just because, I mean, it doesn't look that much when you're there in person, but when you're trying to work through all the grading stuff, it becomes.
And so if I can paraphrase what you just said, that it's an intentional disconnection because of a grade issue.
Yeah, and the uses are not. It's not it's a medical office next door, right? It's not something that a lot of foot traffic is going to want to necessarily be.
Not so much that, other than people who are walking along the pedestrian pathway who might then want to venture out to the main boulevard. They have quite a distance to go to get to the new access street.
Yeah, we have the pedestrian routes that we are providing you'll see down the main throughway that goes down into Homer Ranch, plus on the southwestern corner that extends on down the perimeter.
What I would guess someone would do is simply cut through the parking lot of one of those commercial properties. That's what they were.
Possibly, but if we can fill those commercial spaces, maybe they don't have a need to go. And that's exactly why we worked closely with the city to understand the city and the school to understand how best to do that up north on the northwest, because that's exactly we don't want to create an unsafe opportunity for residents and kids at the high school.
And tell me if I'm understanding the notion behind some of the pathway. It's not to extend any sort of neighborhood pathway or invite a neighborhood pedestrian flow, but rather it's internal to the development. So you're not trying to encourage people to use the pathway along that easterly boundary that aren't residents of this development.
Correct. You'll see the landscaping plan actually shows also like a walkway. Oh, you have that up too. Yeah. So what's here, page top, I guess that big, you'll see a walkway that's kind of meandering through.
That's what I'm referring to
there.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of a cool, but we're trying to retain that as more of a natural kind of space.
And as an amenity for the development, not
Yeah.
as a public pathway.
Correct. Yeah, that's the intent.
Okay, I get it. I asked what the city felt if I was to tweak the condition slightly on the conditional application or conditional development of the last two townhomes to being 2 of the 6-unit townhomes. What's the applicant's response to my thinking about this?
I don't think it's going to matter to us. Honestly, we're pretty optimistic with the partners that we're working on for the commercial developments that's not going to be an issue down the road. But.
And I had raised a question, Mr. Wiebe, about assuring that parking associated with apartments is in fact constructed during the apartment phase or phase 2. What sort of assurances can you offer to that?
So I believe we're talking about the southwestern part of that, right? So one of the needs of that little parking spot right there is actually access to the trash enclosure that'll be right there. So it's going to be critical to the infrastructure of the place to exist. So I think that it's kind of got a built-in requirement.
Okay.
The whole thing doesn't really work without that being in existence. So.
Okay. You heard my questions, Mr. Wiebe, and his responses. Anything else about any of those questions or those responses that you felt the need to respond to?
I think I wanted to make sure we were noting the open walkway. There was a question actually you asked about that walkway in the natural area. And you noted a discrepancy in land size as well, right? Between some of the plan sheets or whatever. And I think that discrepancy is partly due to this kind of diagonal section that's going through there. As we're not putting anything in there, some of the numbers.
Your original narrative back in February was 15.45 acres. The final project's a little under 14. So there's about an acre and a half that got lost somewhere. So, okay.
Yeah, so just trying to be very intentional about circulation and some creating great places for the residents in the community. So
okay. Do you appreciate that? Do you want to have any other members of your team testify, or do you speak on everyone's behalf?
I think they're good.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Understood. Not
unless you have directed questions.
I do not have any directed questions. So, all right.
You have our civil engineer and traffic engineer as well.
Okay.
So if you have questions for those, they'll be probably a little bit more professionally suited to do that than me. So
I think that's it. Thank you, Mr. Drury. So that then is the applicant's presentation. I do not have questions for the other members of the team. And so let's turn to the public portion of this hearing. So are there members of the public who wish to be heard regarding this application? Yes, sir. If so, we'll have you come to the podium. So the record should reflect that you're a committee of 1 today. And so with small turnouts, I do not impose any time restraints. And if there had been a number, I might have gone into a little bit more about the sort of information that's most useful. That is that I'm looking for facts, not so much opinions or what you believe may be a popular or unpopular viewpoint, but simply what you think are important facts to be considering. And so I'll dispense with that standard speech. Just let's have you testify. So your name, sir?
Milton Butler.
Milton?
Milton.
Butler?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Butler, let's have you sworn. You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Go ahead.
I'll finish my address here. My concern mainly is with traffic, and I live in the area, have for, well, a lot of years, 50 years or better. And my concern is, as we've addressed from the city and the developer, pretty much how you're going to get the people out onto the main road. But what are you going to do with them after you get them there? I mean, you got a 2-lane highway that goes to Olympia, and two-lane highway that goes basically out to Roy, Tacoma. And those roads are already over and abundantly used. And I just went this morning and wanted and figured out, like with the Summit at Thompson Creek proposed for development up there. It's 109 residents. Tahoma Terra commercial is probably around 216. I'm just estimating that. Berry Valley townhomes, which is right across the street from my place, that just went from 4 to 16 units per acre. So that could be up to over 200. Another, you know, residential sites. And this one, 228, I came up with a figure around 750 new residents within a mile radius. And I just don't know where you're going to put 700 to 1,400 vehicles going in and out, you know, without, there's no place for them to go. And, you know, and then the city, I did have a question on one of the statements that was made that there would be, you found no hazardous for the traffic or pedestrians in this area. I was wondering where Berry Valley Road comes across to this Tahoma Ranch. If there would be a crosswalk there now, rather than, you know, maybe a lighted blinking light to get across there too. We walk and ride in that area all the time.
I interrupted just so slightly, only to make clear that you're welcomed to ask questions, but what I'll do is I'll capture those questions and then I'll pass them on to who I think.
So I address them to you and then you would address them on.
Yes.
So I'd like that addressed to me.
But I certainly will.
Yeah, okay. And like I said, we use those, we ride bikes, my wife and I, and walk those areas. And at this point, even without further development, it's a nightmare to get across the road. The only place it's got a lit deal is right there at the school where you can get across. So anyway, that's the main concern is I don't see where the traffic's going to go.
I understand.
And now we're going to get in and out of our residence.
Okay, I'll discuss that, Mr. Milton or Butler. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wishing to be heard? The record should reflect none in the auditorium. Does the city show anyone appearing remotely? No. Staff indicates none. And so that would conclude the public hearing. So let's focus on Mr. Butler's questions. I'll begin with staff and maybe back to Mr. Shea. Mr. Butler makes the obvious point that are we focused on the trees and not the forest? Are we looking at this project too individually and not recognizing the collective problem that we have? How would you respond to that concern?
I would say that he's correct that there is existing congestion through the city, and this is not a new condition. I would say that that is the impetus for the Yelm Loop project that is partially constructed and being designed for full completion in the next few years. The city's long-term plan has been to relieve congestion through Yelm Avenue via that loop, that bypass loop, which allows for an alternate route between the Olympia-Lacey area and Pierce County. And so certainly that's the intention, is that we'll be relieving this regional congestion by way of this loop. And given the project's completion horizon, that should be in place before this project opens. And so whether that's sufficient, that is a regional issue, and it is not the sort of thing that an individual project can tackle, which is why this regional roadway project has been in the works for so long. And so the city is, you know, intending for that to kind of solve that problem, at least for a while. I mean, as growth continues, there may need to be additional regional investments, and there's other bypass loops within the long range plan that may have to be prioritized as more growth continues to occur. But for the short term, it is believed that this ongoing loop project will will kind of satisfy some relief through town.
Okay. The other half of his question deals with the intersection of Tahoma Boulevard and Berry Valley Road. And might this be an opportunity to enhance it to ensure improved pedestrian flows across Tahoma Boulevard? I'll begin with you, Mr. Wiebe. And what, if any, did you envision as likely improvements at this intersection as part of the connection of, or the extension of Berry Valley across the road?
We haven't looked at that yet. It's a little out of my comfort zone to speak on that, I suppose, but it does seem.
Is there any staff present today who is better qualified?
I don't believe so.
You really don't have your engineering staff. Okay. If I may, Mr. Cooper just raised his hand. I was going to sort of turn to him as for that one higher level look at something. What is likely to be expected anytime you have Berry Valley extended across the road to the opposite side?
Well, I'm sorry that you regard me as a higher level on this one.
Okay.
I mean, I do usually defer to our civil engineers, but all I was going to say is.
And by the way, let me stop here just for a moment. That was meant from a higher level of policy analysis, not from application. I wasn't meaning to demean Mr. Wiebe in any way.
No.
By that. So,
all I was going to say is I think that this does create an excellent opportunity for a crosswalk there, and maybe possibly, depending on the applicant's willingness, a signalized crosswalk where you push a button, get across the street.
Mr. Butler makes the excellent point that increasingly there is this need to get across Tahoma Boulevard. It sort of becomes an ever greater dividing point south and north. As development takes place on both sides, especially commercial development on the north side and residential development on the south to some extent, and points in which people need to be crossing. Excellent point. So, okay, I take the city's perspective. Mr. Droscher, maybe this is that golden opportunity for your traffic person or you to respond as well.
For Mr. Butler, thank you for being here and expressing your concerns. I will be deferring to Aaron Van Aken, traffic analysis analyst on our side, traffic engineer on our side, because he actually does talk about this in his traffic report a little bit as a potential recommendation of what that could look like.
And Aaron, your last name?
Van Aken, V as in Victor, A-N space A-K. E-N.
Let me get your. And you're with Heath Traffic?
Correct.
Okay, I've got all of your TIA in front of me. And so let's first have you sworn. Mr. Van Aken, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, that was one of the components that we looked at was non-motorist activity. Section 3.4 on page 8 of the TIA, we did go into a recommendation that a marked crosswalk and potentially enhanced crosswalk would be a recommendation. And that is again reiterated on page 29 in the conclusion. Number 1 is depending on the final site plan and commercial uses, a marked crosswalk should be considered at the access intersection of Tahoma Boulevard and Berry Valley Road to facilitate crossings along Tahoma Boulevard. And that was due to evaluation of Tahoma Boulevard, and there's really a lack of north, south, or east-west crossings along the arterial. And with the commercial uses and residential uses, we determined that that would be a benefit given the draw that you have.
So with that recommendation, where do you see it falling on the dividing line between the applicant's responsibilities and perhaps the cities? Where might it come into play?
That is, yeah, for me, I'm doing objectivity.
I understand.
It should be included, and who does it is, I guess, up to the negotiation between the parties.
Not part of your job.
Correct.
Okay. But nonetheless, you see that
It's
as
usually beneficial. So you get community benefit from being able to cross for the existing pedestrians, and you get project benefit. So
for the very same reasons we were talking about a minute ago. Okay. Okay. No, I appreciate that. It's nice to know that from an expert's review, you've looked at and agree with the same things that Mr. Butler is pointing out. So having heard his testimony, you don't disagree with any aspect of his concern then?
no, I don't. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Let me turn back to Mr. Wiebe. Where does the city stand? That there's this recommendation found in the TIA. There's this public concern about it. Where might this issue be best addressed, or who might best address this issue?
I do think we want to consult with the developers, similar to how we negotiated the traffic impact fees. I think it would just be a matter of collaborating. I can't really speak to who should ultimately be responsible.
All right. Mr. Cooper, you wanted to
yes. Well, I mean, we typically, as you know, through SEPA, we require mitigation if there's a nexus, a project has a nexus to an impact. And so typically this would be a developer responsibility.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to adjourn this hearing, but not conclude it, not for the purpose of seeking any additional public testimony, but I'm going to give the parties until Friday to let me know if they have any consensus on this issue, or if not, for me to then decide how I may address it in my decision.
I'm sorry. So Jeff Yates, he's the principal partner of RJ Development. He can actually speak to it.
Okay. Is it testimony, or if you want to testify, I'll have you sworn. If it was something else,
either way, I can respond to kind of the conversation and what we're willing to do.
Okay, so let's have you sworn just to be safe. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And it's Jeff Yates.
Yes, sir. Y-A-T-E-S.
And what is it that you would like to confirm?
Well, I mean, it was in the report. I think the conversation after we submitted the report focused on the the impact fees and how that would resolve that one intersection. If we're talking about, a crosswalk where we put the paint on the concrete, and we put, say, a lighted pole where you can push it and it flashes lights on each side, that's reasonable, and we're willing to do that. So we can just clear that up right now. Let's put it on the developer. We do want to be a good member of the community. It makes sense. There's nothing that we can say where it doesn't make sense. It's reasonable.
Okay.
So we'll just take care of that as part of the development if you want to make it a condition.
And so that there's I don't impose something that everyone else is trying to figure out later on. If I was to say along the easterly side of that intersection, would that be the location that you would anticipate that?
I think the connection between our main central access point where it connects directly across the street.
Let me try that again. That intersection has four.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's on the easterly side.
Yes.
Wherever it makes the most sense.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't think there's.
And Mr. Venny can.
To us.
Well, it's on a curve, so one thing we want to look at is site distance.
Okay, so I won't be
South
as
side.
specific then as.
Yeah,
All right.
well, yeah, I think that could be established through
Okay.
later where it is.
All
But I recognize
Yeah,
the south side.
I know enough that I can be dangerous if I impose engineering requirements, and so sometimes it's very helpful to do so. Sometimes it can create a nightmarish situation to try to be too helpful, but
Can I offer a suggestion on the timing of that?
yes, please.
I think it makes sense, if this is approved, our next step is to submit civil engineering plans for the phase one, which is the commercial site improvements, which puts in the roads, the accesses, the utility connections and so forth for the commercial. I would propose we do it at the same time.
Okay.
So it would go in pretty quickly. It would go in before anything else goes in. And I think that would benefit the community and it'd also make the most sense financially to do it.
That's both smart and generous suggestion, and so I appreciate that. So I am not going to delay my decision to allow further input. I think that resolves the issue of doing that. I think, Mr. Butler, I do appreciate you bringing this up because it's improved the project. So I'm going to go ahead and approve the required decisions, which is principally that approving the mixed use development, but secondarily approving the 6-lot subdivision since it's incorporated in as a lesser requirement of my decision. I am going to impose the conditions recommended by staff, but add to that this one relative to the crosswalk, and also the minor additional requirement that the final two townhomes subject to the commercial development will be 6-unit or 6-resident townhomes. With those tweaks, I'm otherwise accepting of the city staff recommendations. I'll go ahead and prepare this decision as quickly as I can. It's a mildly complicated one to draft because it requires a host of findings followed by legal conclusions and then the decision. So this will take me several days to do, but I have 2 weeks to accomplish that. I don't envision any problem accomplishing that within the allowed time. I do understand that any delay I cause is a delay in the project itself because your other permits await my decision, and therefore I'm sensitive to that and will accelerate my efforts to the extent I can so that you're not waiting any longer than you have to. So you should anticipate a set of findings, conclusions, and a decision approving this application within a relatively short time. Are there any last questions about that? If not, I want to thank everyone for a well thought out presentation and a mildly improved one. I do believe this is going to be a good project, and I'll try to reciprocate by sharing my decision as quickly as I can. Thank you.
Never know. Good luck.